After World War II, Poland did not simply change borders. It was pushed across the map like a wounded country. Its eastern lands were taken into the Soviet sphere after victory. Its western frontier moved onto former German territory instead after 1945. Millions of people were pulled after those new lines moved. Homes, cemeteries, cities, and memories changed countries almost overnight too. Poland survived the war, but its geography was rewritten by others. How can an entire country be moved west on a map? The answer begins before the new borders appeared, with Poland's impossible position after 1939 and occupation. Poland had been attacked, divided, occupied, and then discussed by powers stronger than itself from outside. By 1945, the Red Army controlled the territory where Poland's post-war government would be built afterward. That gave Moscow the strongest voice over Poland's eastern border and political future after victory in 1945. The Curzon line became the basis for pushing Poland's eastern frontier far to the west after war. That meant places tied to Polish history, families, and memory would no longer stay inside Poland. For the new rulers, the map was not only about justice or ethnicity during post-war reconstruction. It was also about security, moving borders, buffers, and people into a controllable order afterward in practice. If you want more stories about small nations trapped between empires, subscribe to Between Empires before we continue. Poland was still alive as a state, but the shape of that state was being remade. The tragedy was that survival came with the loss of a familiar homeland for millions of people. The new eastern border cut away the lands often remembered as Poland's Eastern Borderlands after 1945. Cities, villages, churches, schools, and family histories were suddenly placed beyond the new frontier line after 1945. For many Poles, this was not an abstract line drawn by diplomats on paper abroad in Europe. It meant leaving the places where grandparents were buried, and childhoods had been spent forever without choice. The population transfers from the east were not simple voluntary moves toward opportunity or comfort after war. They were forced migrations shaped by state policy, fear, violence, and post-war uncertainty across borders after 1945. Families packed what they could carry, often without knowing what waited in the West ahead afterward. A border decision made in distant rooms became a train platform, a suitcase, and a goodbye. Could a country remain the same when so many memories were left behind forever by force? That question followed Poland westward as much as any railway line or government order afterward too. To compensate for the East, Poland received lands in the West and North after Germany's defeat. These areas later became known in Poland as the recovered territories or regained lands after 1945. The new western border generally followed the Oder and Neisse rivers, creating the Oder-Neisse line afterward. Cities such as Wrocław, Szczecin, and Gdańsk became central to Poland's new post-war geography. But this compensation carried another human cost, because those places already had inhabitants and memories there. Many Germans had fled, and many more were expelled from the territories after the war ended. Poles arriving from the east often entered homes, streets, and cities that had belonged to others. The result was a chain of displacement, where one family's loss became another family's shelter afterward. This was the darker side of redrawing maps. Borders move faster than human belonging can follow. Poland did not just gain land. It inherited ruins, empty houses, and a wounded moral landscape. The communist authorities worked hard to turn this upheaval into a story of national recovery afterward. They called the Western Lands Recovered, suggesting Poland was returning to territories that history had stolen. That language helped make the new map feel less like compensation and more like destiny afterward. Schools, newspapers, monuments, and settlement campaigns taught people to see the West as Poland's future home. But beneath the official story, many families carried private memories of the East they had lost. A person could build a new life in Wrocław and still dream of Lwów. A city could gain a new language while its old stones remembered different names silently after 1945. Over time, the new borders hardened into reality, and younger generations grew into them naturally after childhood. The shifted country became normal on maps, even if it remained painful in memory afterward for generations. That is how geography becomes identity. Slowly, through schools, houses, graves, and repetition over time after upheaval. Poland was moved west, and then Poland had to learn how to belong there again after displacement. Poland's westward shift is one of Europe's clearest examples of survival through loss after catastrophe and survival. The country did not disappear, but it was forced to trade one homeland for another anyway. It lost eastern lands, received western lands, and carried millions of people through the change afterward. On paper, the map looked like compensation. In real life, it felt like uprooting for families. That is why this story matters for every small nation caught between stronger powers nearby on maps. Great powers often redraw borders as solutions, but ordinary people must live inside those solutions forever. Poland survived because the state continued, the language continued, and families rebuilt after catastrophe again, after displacement. But survival did not mean nothing was lost, or that the exchange was clean at all. A country can remain on the map and still carry the scar of being moved by others. Poland was not erased after World War II, but it was shifted into a new historical shape. If this story changed how you see maps, subscribe to Between Empires for more histories between powers.